This country is small but mighty. It has a lot of history and a lot of tourists come here. But why? What is so great about Malta? Is it good to live? Is it affordable? What would your lifestyle be like? I'm Kaylee with Expats Everywhere, and we're going to break down moving to, living in, and working in Malta. Join me.
Malta, or by its official name, the Republic of Malta, is located in the Mediterranean Sea and is part of the European Union. It's actually an archipelago, but only the three largest islands are inhabited. Those islands are Malta, Gozo, and Comino.
These three islands are fairly close to each other and accessible by boat. We will mostly be focusing on the largest island, Malta, but you can also consider Gozo and Comino as a place to live as well.
Now, the great news about Malta is that one of the official languages is English. It used to be a British colony. English is spoken and taught in school, so even those people that speak Maltese, their other official language, will be comfortable because English is also spoken. Another fun thing to note is because of its proximity to Sicily and Italian tourists, a lot of people have a decent understanding of speaking Italian too.
Malta joined the EU in 2004, so traveling around the Schengen is seamless. This also means that the currency is the euro. There are 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites and is believed to be inhabited as far back as 5900 BC, so lots of history here. When you live here, you can explore that.
So for those of you who have an EU passport, moving here is easy. You can live and work here, but you need to inform the country of your intent to live here. So that's simply alerting them of your job, how long you plan to stay, and things like that. Keep in mind that if you become a permanent resident, you will need to pay taxes in Malta, but because of the double taxation treaties, you shouldn't have to pay a tax in your home country. But check this out with a tax specialist.
There are 2 types of residency visas. Those from the EU can apply for the ordinary residence or permanent residence. The difference between the two is taxes. The ordinary residence needs to be renewed every 5 years. The permanent residence needs to be renewed every year. So those in the EU can choose, but those outside of the EU have to apply for the permanent residence.
So for those of you outside of the EU, it's obviously a little trickier, but there are plenty of visa opportunities to look into. You can move here for work, you can invest, or you can prove that you can financially support yourself.
You can apply for your residency permit at the Department of Citizenship and Expatriates Affairs, or if you aren't sure, there are always services you can hire to assist you. Now, while you're living here, you'll obviously want to explore what all the country has to offer.
As far as other things to do, besides the historical aspect, of course, you have beaches, diving, water sports, anything related to the water, because, well, it's an island. There are also caves and hiking opportunities for those of you who enjoy the warmth and the outdoors. Malta is a great place to consider. You can also visit the aquarium here.
So what do yearly temperatures look like? It does get rainy and cool in the winter, but let's put cool in perspective. The lows in the winter just get down into the 40s and highs creep into the 60s. It mainly hovers around the 50s though in the winter. The rain starts in the fall and is the heaviest in the winter, then just a little in the spring.
So as you guys can see, the summers can get very warm. There is not a lot of rain, high temperatures. Don't forget your sunscreen. The highs get into the 80s and the lows can drop into the 60s. Averages mainly stay in the 80s during the summer.
Maybe you want to live in a capital city. Well, how about the smallest capital of the European Union in both area and population?
Valletta is sandwiched between 2 harbors, with Fort St. Elmo at the tip. The city is gridded out nicely and still has its gate. It is a little hilly with narrow streets and some stairs. It has a mixture of pedestrian-only streets and some areas where cars can go. It's not the best to drive because of the traffic, the narrow streets, and the people walking around, but that being said, to enjoy the whole island, you'll probably need a car here. We'll talk about driving around the island later.
Housing prices in Valletta will vary depending on location, size, amenities, and other things, but just to give you an idea, a 1-bedroom in the city center will be around 1,000 euros a month, and if you move a little outside of the center, it will drop to around 800 euros a month. If you go bigger and get a 3-bedroom, expect to pay close to 2,000 euros in the city center and 1,300 outside of the center.
Buying can be tricky because the city is old, but luxury apartments continue to grow in popularity. You can definitely spend €1 million if you're looking for a penthouse here, but if that's not your style and you're looking for something smaller and renovated apartments, you can find those for cheaper. For example, you can find a 1-bedroom for 300,000 euros in the city, and if you want something bigger, it'll be closer to 600,000 to 700,000.
The Upper Bear Gardens are public and offer a panoramic view. This is enjoyable for both locals and those visiting the island. There are monuments and statues to check out, but you can also just relax here with friends. Another notable location in Valletta is St. John's Cathedral.
When choosing a place to live, you need to take into consideration work and lifestyle. If you don't have a car, you might want to work and live in some of these places. These are also the most popular places for expats.
These are the districts for nightlife, so take that into consideration. If you want to be in the thick of it all, look for a place here. If you prefer something quieter, then stay away from these areas.
These areas offer a lot of job opportunities though. You can work at a restaurant, bar, hotel, casino, and more. Tourism is a great industry to find a job in. More about working a little later though.
There is a bus, but sometimes it's unreliable. Traffic can be an issue. Ferries allow for you to get around as well, and of course you have motorbikes to zip around quickly. That might not be a realistic option though if you have kids.
These areas are great for family. Here you have a good variety of international and private schools. Prices and locations will vary. Public schools are an option. They tend to be in Maltese, and the curriculum is similar to the UK because of their past relationships. The country practices freedom of religion, however, Roman Catholicism is the official religion, which is practiced in schools.
There are churches that offer schooling, which is more of a private option, but oftentimes those are in English. They're mainly government funded, but there is a required donation that is around or a bit more than 500 euros per child. This is lower than other private schools, but because they're desirable, they have long wait lists.
Yeah, and private schools will be closer to 3,500 to 4,000. So you do have the option of international schools, which are primarily IB curriculum, but there are some US-based curriculum schools as well. Tuition will depend on how old your child is and which school, but expect to pay at least several thousand euros a year. If your child is older, you're looking at 6,000 to 10,000 euros a year, and that's just tuition. If you want to take advantage of their residency program, boarding fees can be anywhere from 10,000 to 20,000 a year.
The north tends to have more expats, but because of that, you'll see higher prices. Housing in some of these desirable areas will be comparable to Valletta for both renting and buying. Do remember that there are luxury mansions available here, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other options as well. The south of the island is a bit more rural and traditional, so it's possible to find a better deal here, but you might not be around as many expats.
Like we mentioned earlier, working in the food and beverage industry is a great option for those of you looking for work. Because the island draws many tourists, you have options to work on a boat for those of you wanting to dive, work at a casino, a hotel, or really anything that's related to tourism, because there are well over 1 million tourists that visit every year.
Banking is another big industry in Malta. If you're looking to start a business, then you might want to check out Malta because they are very pro-business and try to make it doable and affordable. This goes for how they tax as well. Being a digital nomad here is also something you could do, so lots of opportunities.
Kalie and I have visited Malta, but would we expat it? All right, so what do you think of Malta?
I was actually really surprised. I guess I hadn't really thought too much of what Malta looked like, but just thinking it's part of the EU. As we flew in, I was surprised to see the architecture was very Middle Eastern, and that I just wasn't thinking what it would look like, but I was like, whoa, this feels very Middle Eastern.
Yeah, Middle Eastern, North African. Yeah. North
That
African,
architecture, that look.
more.
I guess I thought it'd be greener maybe. I don't know why.
That was the thing I was gonna say is I thought it'd be much greener. I thought that I did not realize it would be so beige.
Yeah.
That really struck me.
Yeah, same with me. I guess I'm just thinking like island, location of where it is would be greener, but that's not the case. It's beige.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we think island, we think like Caribbean, like very colorful,
Lush,
bright.
yeah, tropical.
Yeah. But this was very different. A lot of foreigners, a ton of foreigners that we met, we talked to. Not just tourists, but people that were living there, had been living there several years. Plenty of Italians,
Yeah,
for sure.
that was a surprise too.
That seemed to be like an easy transition. Not just Sicilian, but like mainland
Italians.
Italians. So yeah, that was an interesting dynamic.
I would say too, going into the different neighborhoods, you could feel that they were very different. So moving there, I think you'd want to maybe stay in a place short term and get a feel for which neighborhood really fits your lifestyle and what you're looking for, because they did feel very different, from the nightlife ones to things that were a little slower paced, some closer to like playgrounds, some closer to better options for food. So the neighborhoods were quite diverse, and the little cities as well along the way.
Yeah, and I think selecting a neighborhood of any of these kind of videos that we do, this series that we do or style that we do, Malta in particular would be really important to get right. Yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Because depending on your lifestyle,
yeah,
you could either love it or be very frustrated with where you've ended up living.
Yep, and if you don't want a car, that'll be difficult, I think, because unless you're living in like Valletta or living down in like the heart of one of these places, which gets a lot of tourists as well, that's the only really way you can walk around. Obviously, there are, there's a bus and everything, but it's an island, so it's not as reliable. If you want to live a little outside of these areas, you'll definitely want a car. But I think a lot of people want a car, which is why there's a lot of traffic.
Yeah, there's a ton of traffic. So here's my hot take for Malta. It doesn't feel like it's done. It feels like it's 80% completed, like everywhere you look. So whether that's like buildings being like going up, or a construction site that is not even being worked on, or you go into a new restaurant or new cafe or something and it doesn't look like it's been finished, or marketing, for example, it's like you went 80%, like you got there 80%. Just go the other 20%. Like finish out the marketing on whatever your little thing is and make it look actually good and presentable.
Yeah.
I felt that everywhere we went. Everywhere we went, except the Starbucks. They had a fancy Starbucks there that was like, Starbucks did it. And I'm not a Starbucks guy, but I appreciated that
they went 100%.
That they went 100%.
Okay, well then on that note, let's talk about if you would expat that.
So what does that mean?
Well, so expat, this is the part of the segment where we ask each other, ask you guys, if you would live in a place for a certain amount of time. So would you expat that?
No.
Oh, why?
No. I felt like it was too expensive. That really surprised me, just how expensive things are. I mean, and we went there, we went there from Portugal, and Portugal is not the cheapest country in Europe, but it is known to be inexpensive, and it is. But Malta just seemed to be high priced on things that didn't make sense. Groceries were very high priced.
Yeah. I would say the same thing. No, I would not expat that, just for a few different reasons. There's a lot of people, a lot of tourists, a lot of turnover, which I think could get old.
Like people?
No, I just think it could get old after a while. When you live in a place, you want to get settled, kind of make it feel like home, and I think it might not feel like home. I also enjoy not having a car, not having to drive, so that would be difficult because then you're in the more densely populated areas if you don't have a car. So for me, I would say Malta is a no.
Yeah, so going back to your point about the people, this is one thing I noticed, and this is just my perception, is that the international community there is very transient. Now, oftentimes, you get an international community, expats, that you move. Like, you're not fixed. You're not staying somewhere for 20 years. You're staying somewhere for a couple of years because maybe your job relocated you, or you just want to experience something new and different. And it just seemed like that community is very transient, and people don't take care of each other because of that. It's like, this is gonna be the person I hang out with for the next 6 months or a year, and then they're gonna leave, or I'm gonna leave, or whatever. And it didn't seem like there were like good, healthy relationships. I may be blowing this way out of like
depending on where you are
perspective,
but I think that it would be a good option for a digital nomad. Because of that transience, and you kind of know that lifestyle. Prices might be a little high.
They could feed into it.
Well, but I think that it would be common for a digital nomad. A good place there.
Yeah. So instead of Malta, how about choosing another tiny country that you might be interested in and haven't heard much about? Luxembourg. Luxembourg is right here. Check it out because it's wonderful, and it's a place that we really enjoyed.
Yep.
And maybe you will too. Now let's get moving. Bye.
Bye.